Okay, perfect. So yeah, welcome to planning your text analysis project. My name, actually we're going to do one more housekeeping thing, which is I am enabling the transcription. So I am putting on captions. If you find them distracting, which is something that I know can sometimes happens, at the bottom on your menu bar at the bottom, you will be able to find it. Sometimes I don't know if it says slide transcript or closed caption or subtitles, but you should be able to disable them if you happen to find them distracting. So just know that that is an option, but I always like to have them just to make sure that, those who need it can actually use them. So now we are ready to start. Again, welcome to planning your text analysis project. And my name is Marcela Isuster. I do a lot of things at the library, but I'm mainly the coordinator of the Digital Scholarship Hub, who is the we are the hub, I guess, that puts on these types of workshops, and we work a lot with text analysis and things like that. I am also a liaison librarian for a few departments, including the School of Information Studies, Hispanic Studies, and the Department of Kinesiology and Physical Education. But today I'm here as the coordinator of the Digital Scholarship Hub. Okay, so let's go over what we're going to be doing today. I know that I booked like an hour and a half for this. We might not need as much time, but I always want to make sure that we have time if we need it. So we're going to do a quick introduction, and then we're going to talk about finding corpora. Then we're going to go into finding text analysis tools, and we're going to finish with managing your research data and different types of outputs for your project or for your text analysis projects. One thing that I want to make very clear is that today we're going to learn everything that's available to you to plan these projects and to do these projects. We're not going to go into the individual tools. We're not going to go into the individual places where you can get corpora. Part of it is time. But also when you do a text analysis project, you might have very specific needs. So in those cases, you may want to contact the Digital Scholarship Hub. You may want to contact your librarian, and then we can help you that way. As I said, I am recording this session. It will be on our YouTube channel, but I will also be sharing my slides with everyone who has registered for the workshop. So I have a lot of links in here. Don't worry about it. You'll be able to click on them once I send you the slides, probably later today or sometime this week. But as I said, I just want to make sure that we are all clear that we're going to be doing more like a review or what's available and some best practices. And then if you want specific, you learn specific tools or work with specific platforms, then we have some workshops for that, but you can just meet with one of us in the library and we can help you out. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'm working on one screen today because I'm recording, so it may take me a little bit longer to see them. But what I usually do is once I finish a section, I go and check if there are any questions. So feel free to put them in the chat, and then towards the end, once I turn off the cameras, I'm happy to have you unmute yourselves, and we can actually have more of a conversation. Okay, so we're gonna get started with what is text analysis. I feel like if you're here, you might have an idea of what it is, but it's always good to review it. This is a quote, this is a definition that I personally like, which says text mining or text analytics is an umbrella term describing a range of techniques that seek to extract useful information from document collections through the identification and exploration of interesting patterns in the unstructured textual data of various types of documents. So it's, when we use technology to discover these patterns in text that, they would not be as visible to a human eye. I always like to say when I teach text analysis that we all do text analysis. We've been doing it since we learned to read. This is just a different type of text analysis that is, it's not visible to our eyes when we read something, and we're using technology to help us get those patterns and to discover those sort of hidden secrets in the text. A few things to consider before we embark on a text analysis project, and a lot of it is what we're going to cover today, and you're going to get a lot of guidance on how to, think about these things. So the first one is, why are we doing this project? And, what are your goals for this project? What are you trying to find out? So what is the research question? What's the point of doing this? Obviously, if you've done research in the past, even if it's not text analysis research, you'll know that, your research question defines so much of how you're going to run your study, right? It defines what you're going to study or what population you're going to study. It defines what you want to find out. It defines your study methodology. So all those things are the same for a text analysis project. You need to know what you want to do before we're able to do anything. So always being very clear on what that why is. Next up, we move to the what. So what are you going to analyze? What is your corpora? Your corpora is actually like the set of documents that you will be, or the set of texts that you will be analyzing. You also have to know if that data is available. Can I actually do this? Because a lot of things sound really cool, but is that data there? Sometimes it's not. Are there any restrictions on its use? We're going to talk a little bit more about restrictions on copyright things when it comes to library collections and things like that. And we also want to know what format it's in. So, we need sometimes we need specific formats to be able to do specific analysis. And unfortunately, it's not always easy to get like the data we need in those formats. So we'll talk a little bit about who provides what and what we can do with that. And then the last thing to consider is, what tools will you be using? So is it, what kind of, are we going to use an open access platform? Are we going to be using a web-based environment to do our text analysis? Then we want to know what your output or what will the end product be. So you're going to write an article, what is going to happen, and then how you will preserve or share your data once you are done. So today's presentation will cover some of these things. As I said, some of them you can't really know until you know what your project is, but these are things for us to think about as we work on our text analysis project, or we plan our text analysis project. So our first little bit that we're going to talk about today is finding corpora. So as I mentioned before, corpora is it's actually the plural of corpus. And it's, those texts that we're going to analyze. Now, sometimes you have your own data set that you built, and that's great, but other times you need to get data sets that are already existing. So we're going to go a little bit over what that means and what is available to you right now at McGill and also sort of in the world, but we'll talk a little bit about what's there, and I'll show you a few examples. So I have divided this into two sort of different types. There's Freecorpora, so things are freely available online and you can go and get them with no problems. And then we're going to talk more about things that are licensed, so things that we pay money for in the library, because as you can imagine, those have more restrictions, or those are sort of different. So when it comes to Freecorpora, there are quite a few things available already. Like this list that I have here is by no means exhaustive. If you go to the link that I have in here, and we're going to go in a little bit, you'll see that we have even more, and that's just a list that we came up with, but there's probably even more. But so these are projects that have been done, that have created corpora for you to work with. So a couple of examples, we have some plain text collections. So these are collections that, the data is already in plain text. I have an example here, which is Novel 450, which we're going to go now. So this is, give me a second, just want to make sure that I am showing you what I should be showing you. So Novel 450 is a data set of 450 novels. It was put together by the McGill Text Lab, if I'm not mistaken, by 289 authors in a variety of languages, and they have 150 novels per language. And that is a data set that's ready to go and that you can just download and use. So if you were to come here, you can just download this data set and you really don't need to worry about it. So it's sort of like it's in plain text. It's ready it's ready to go. So we have there's a few collections like this that are available there. So I have the number 450. Feeding America is a plain text collection of American cookbooks. And we have some more in there. As I said, this is not an exhaustive list. This is more examples for us to get a better idea of what things are. We also have some digital libraries. So you may have heard of the past Project Gutenberg, which has collections of books that are out of copyright and therefore can be put online with, we're not violating any copyright laws. So Project Gutenberg has a collection of books. The PLOS also has its own digital library where you can get a ton of stuff as well. So these are, again, websites where you can just get collections. We have some linguistic corpora, so it's not only novels and it's not only like a library, so like such as the Australian National Corpus or the Oxford Text Archive, which we're going to take a look at right now. So this is the Oxford Text Archive. It's, again, but you can have like, it's sermons, and you can find all these kinds of different documents that you could use, and they're there for you. You can download them and then you can use them in your analysis. This is all open access. It's all free. I know that the Ulster Text Archive, they've just gone through, they're doing a review of their project. So they're not adding new content for a while, but it will be there. They'll probably resume at some point. Next up, we have our McGill Library data sets. So we, just like, Oxford was digitizing and putting things on their text archive, in the McGill Library, we have done, also we have created collections of data sets that you can use. They're like, in text form, well, not in text form, they're in XML. They're in a different format, but it's a format that is conducive to this kind of work. And we have digitized a lot of our collections and put them in this format. So you can take a look at what those are, and they're open to anyone who wants to use them. They're free. There's no license. There are no licensing issues. So I'll just show you the McGill, what we have here at McGill. So this is the link that I have on this page. This is a guide. This is a link to our text and data mining guide. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, you'll find links and more information on access and things like that on this page. But what I wanted to go to is our McGill digitized. So as you can see, we have a few projects that we have already digitized, and that they're there for you to explore if you want to. As I said, they're open access, they're free to use. They're in pretty good condition in terms of like the file, like the format of the files. So they're almost ready to go if you wanted to use them for text analysis. And I would say most of the Freecorpora as well. However, not all of it. Something like the Gutenberg project, you might just get the raw text files, or you might get like just something that looks like an HTML file. So you might need to do a little more work on them. But these are, just a few places where you can get Freecorpora, and just for you to be aware that you can actually get Freecorpora and use that, and then that will be fine. Now, that might not serve your purpose, and you may need to go on to our next thing, which is, getting a licensed corpora. So licensed corpora is corpora that, the library buys. Either we buy it, like we intentionally buy it, or it comes with our subscription, or it's just a perk of us subscribing to a database. But there are 3 different ways. So we'll talk a bit more about how we would do that and what we need to know. So the first tab that we have, easiest one, is our platform based. So there's been a shift in the services that a lot of databases provide for us, and because there's been a shift in research and there's been more interested in text data mining or text analysis. So what has been happening is more and more this database providers create platforms where you can create your own data sets really easily, and then sometimes analyze them within those within those platforms, or you can easily extract it and then analyze it on the tool that you choose to do that. So a few examples of this are the TDM Studio, which is the latest one that we got here at McGill, which is a pretty nifty tool. Constellate is put together by the same people who do JSTOR. And then Gale has the Gale Digital Scholars Lab, which again allows you to create your own data sets, and then sometimes you can analyze them in platform, although it's a little bit more limited what you can do, and other times you can just extract your data. So I'll show you really quickly, since we are here, we have the time. So I'll show you, this is what the Gale Digital Scholar Lab looks like. So these are some of my data sets, but it's actually really, really easy to use. You create a content set, and this allows us to search our Gale collection. So all these platforms most of these platforms tend to work with the access that we have, and getting things that we don't have, that's a trickier thing. So back. So I created a set where I have a few sets over here where, I have just built a set with documents. Basically, I can just add content over here on my set, and I run a search and I search. One of the nice things about these tools is that to get your documents, you just search the same way you would search a database. So it's actually easy. And if you're not as familiar, then with more complex searching or with more sort of like techie ways of getting information, then these platforms are really useful, because you are able to get the information that you need by just searching the same way you would search a database. So like this one, let's say I'm going to do, I think I did Argentina before, and then I do my search, and then I choose which documents I want to include. I can filter it, I can do a whole bunch of things, and then so I select them. I can just add them to my content set. And that's it. So it's very easy to create that data set, that corpus for yourself, because you don't really need to know a lot about, like programming languages or things like that. So these tools are really handy to do that. Now, what are some of the limitations? First one is you are limited to the content that we have access to. Second limitation is that depending on the platform, you will have a limit of how many documents you can have at a time in a data set, or how many data sets you can have at a time. So I can't remember exactly for Gale what it is, but for example, for the TDM Studio, which is the one that's owned by ProQuest, that looks like it's 2 million documents, which is quite a bit, I have to say. Like, it's pretty generous. But you may have something where you need more than 2 million documents. With the Gale Digital Scholar Lab, we had one where I had one where our needs really exceeded what the limit was, and then we had to look for alternative arrangements. But just know that those are sort of the limitations. But these tools are really easy to use, or fairly easy to use to build that data set. And that's really useful if you are, maybe like using things like APIs or things like that it's a little bit more challenging for you. So these are platform-based. We have, as I said, we have access to TDM Studio, which is most of the ProQuest content. We have the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. And then Constellate is has sort of like two parts, and there's a part that is open access, so you can create your data sets from most JSTOR content. So it's pretty good. Then we have the ones that are like upon request. So platform-based, most of the time, you don't even need to talk to a librarian. You can just go on the platform, build your data set, work with it, no problems. Other times, we have access to the data, either for free or at a cost, but we need to ask the database provider for a hard drive or an API key. So these are ones sometimes that you will maybe need to contact your librarian or the Digital Scholarship Hub for some help with this. Not so much the API keys you can get them on your own. But if you want something that would like a data set that would probably need to get on a hard drive or something like that, then you definitely need to talk to us, and we can help you negotiate, like, get to that. A lot of times we can get it for free. Other times there's a cost. Sometimes we can cover it, sometimes we can't. And then but if you have a grant or something like that, it can be covered by your grant. Couple of examples. So Aaron Matthews, we have access to, we can request things from them if we need them. Elsevier, which is, the company behind Scopus and a few pretty big journals, has an API key that you can ask for. And it's actually like their API key is pretty good in the sense, or their API that anyone can use it. But if you want like some extra access, then it would be limited to the collections you have access to. We have a pretty good collection of Elsevier things, so you should be okay. Now, for things like this, for like anything that requires an API key, you do need to have some programming language, but because you will need to run scripts. So just know that some of them will require, actually anything that we are getting, either if we're getting a hard drive, you will need to know programming to work with that data. That's just the way it is, because you will need to run scripts on things. But definitely for like anything that has an API key, you will need to run scripts to extract the data that you want. But Elsevier has it, and then IE Explorer. So if I have any engineering researchers in the audience today, like we have it through IE. So there are, again, these are things that we have, but it requires like an extra step for you to get them. And then we come to our last one category, which is it's just not available. So sometimes there are databases that do not sell text files. EBSCO is one of them. This may have changed since last time I checked, but like they haven't gotten to that part yet. Like they haven't created that business model yet for themselves. So it's just either not available, or it's the prices are just like out of this world. So a good example of this is Factiva, that it does sell the data, but we would never be able to afford it. So those are unfortunately are just not available, and it's just a limitation that we have. But anything that is platform-based or upon request, you can probably get, and we will try our best to get to help you get it. But just as important to know that sometimes the data is just not available. Either it's not for sale, or we just can't afford it. So just things to know in terms of like the different types of data that we have. Very important. Under no circumstance, scrape a database on your own. I know that like you might think, oh, I have the programming skills to do it, I'm just going to do it. But two things are going to happen. The first one is the moment you try the database, like you will be kicked out of the database, which is bad for you. But just so you know, it's also bad for us, because then our access gets cut. So please do not do that. So anything that you get from the McGill Library, please do not try to scrape it on your own. Always talk to us and see if it's what's possible. When it comes to website and things that are just on the web, then that's a different thing. And depending on what it is, you can just do it on your own. That's fine. But anything that, like we are bound by our license agreements, and it's very clear that we cannot do this, and our students and our researchers should not do this. So please do not do it. Okay, someone says, what is scraping a database? So scraping a database is when you use a script So like use like Python script or use like a web crawler or, you know, to extract all the information from that database without, you know, without getting any permission from the database. So it would be like, I think the equivalent would be like maybe like just photocopying a full book, which I know people do, but it's a violation of our terms because you're not using the database in the way that it's intended to be. It's intended, you know, what's the intended use of the database, and because of that, we can get in trouble. You can get in trouble. So please never ever do that. If you have questions, just talk to us, and we'll try to find a best solution. But just know that sometimes what we want is just not, it doesn't exist, right? The same way sometimes we're looking for articles that don't exist because nobody has researched them. Here, like sometimes what we want is just not for sale and it's not available to us. Perfect. So this is our little thing on corpora, and how to find that corpora. As I said, these are just examples. You can find more, and there's a lot of links in the, you know what, since we are here, I'm just going to send you the link to our, I'm going to send you the link to our LibGuide so you can get it there. Okay, I see. What is the alternative to scraping, or what is usage without scraping? That would mean whenever you go into a database and you look for articles the normal way, and then you download your articles. So that's how we use a database regularly, right? That's how a database is intended to be used. So anything that is not that, and that you're using like, I don't know, a web crawler or any kind of like, you know, script to extract information without doing like a regular search and things like that, that would be scraping. But anytime you use a database in the normal way that it's intended to be used, again, you go into a database, you run your search, you extract, you export the information that you need, either you download it, you put it to a note, anything like that, that's totally fine. You know, that's how we, that's how they, that's what they, how they want you to use this data. So I hope it's clear. Perfect. Okay, awesome. So let's talk a little bit about text analysis tools and a few tips on how to learn them or where to learn them. So to clean up your data, we have a few. There is OpenRefine, there's the Trifactor Wrangler, Talent Data Preparation, and Lexis. Lexis is really good for non-Latin alphabet languages. So if you have something that's not in a Latin alphabet, that's something that may come in handy. OpenRefine is a Google tool. We do have a workshop coming up on November 8th for OpenRefine. If you sign up for, if you sign up for this one, you should be able to sign up for the other one in terms of like where to find it. But I have linked it here as well. So my colleague Robin is teaching a workshop on OpenRefine, and it's a really, really useful tool to help you clean up your data. So don't miss that one on November 8th. And again, I said I'm going to link, and links to all of this are on the link that I just sent you on the link to our guide. Then let's talk about analyzing your data. So there's a few different ways to do it and a few different tools. So a lot of the platforms that we have for creating data sets will also allow you to analyze the data. Sometimes it will kind of force you to do it there. So the TDM Studio, for example, has two tools that allow you to do some easy visualizations on your own. And then it also has a Jupyter Notebooks environment where you would do, or you're like more like R or Python. I'll talk about what those are in a minute. But your R or Python analysis. So they want you sort of to do it in there, although you can extract, like if you have run a first analysis there, and then you can extract it. It's just they won't let you extract the full text. Digital Scholar Lab also has a lot of tools where you can do it. Happy Trust Analytics is another one that will allow you to do this, and it sometimes provides like your own environment. So usually what you find in these tools is a mix of like some easy, you can just do them in platform. You don't need to know anything, any programming to be able to do them. So easy tools. And then you'll also have environments where you can use things like R and Python to analyze the data. So it's kind of like caters to both levels of programming knowledge. So some of them, as I said, you can do it in platform. And then we have some web-based. So a very popular one is Voyant Tools. It's the one that whenever I teach text analysis to beginners, that is how I start. It's a very easy to use tool. It's actually online. You don't need to download anything. Again, you don't really need any programming knowledge. So if you're a beginner and you want to get started and want to see a few things, I strongly recommend Voyant Tools. My colleague Kristen is doing a workshop on Voyant on October 20th. So just know that that is available to you. We tend to offer workshops on Voyant like every semester, but that's a great option. And then there's also Claws that is online. And then there are things that you can just download onto your computer. So these are just a few examples. Some of them have a steeper learning curve than others. There's things like Mellet or Drextra. R is a very popular one for text analysis. For R, we usually offer workshops, although I don't think we have any this semester, but we'll probably have them in the winter. But the CDSI, the Center for Data and Systems Initiative, I think it's called. I'm happy to link it later. They're offering an entire series on R this fall. So just know that that is an option if you're interested in R. And then I put Spider there because Spider you do with Python. So I mentioned Python a few times already, and Python is a programming language that's very much used for text analysis. And we do have upcoming workshops on that in November 14th and the 21st. It's a two-part workshop. It's a two-part workshop that my colleague Clara does. It's a beginner workshop, so it's an intro to Python. There are other places on campus and the CDSI. I'll put the link before before we log off. I'll make sure to put the link to the CDSI. So we give you an intro. They can get you to the next level. I know that they're offering R this semester, but over the summer they have like a Python intensive. So those are there. You can also just do a lot of learning on your own. But if you want to get started, see what it looks like, I encourage you to on November 14th, my colleague Clara, she'll be able to, oh, perfect. Thank you, Milan. So we have, I have a question here. If you have used R before, but not for text analysis, it's transitional labor intensive. That's a good question. I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so. I know that for our workshop on text analysis, we do, we do a two-part workshop and it works really well and you're really set for doing the text analysis. So I'm thinking that if you already have some R knowledge, then you might be one step farther than everyone else. So I wouldn't think so. I think that if you're comfortable with R, then sticking with R might be a good choice for you. Okay, perfect. So let's talk a little bit about managing your research data, because you're going to have a lot of data and what to do with it, and a few recommendations that we have. The first one, just a quick research data management, 101, or in this case 3-2-1, is make sure you have 3 copies of your data, 2 on different storage mediums and 1 copy off-site. So that means that, you want to have maybe 1 copy in your computer, 1 copy in the cloud, and then 1 copy on a hard drive somewhere else. So that means that you are keeping your data safe, and that you will always have a backup for your data. This is just a quick RDM, or research data management speech, but just know that we do also have a really good workshops on research data management that you can take. My colleague Elisa is brilliant at them, so I just want you to make sure that you know that. But whenever you have to think about it now, I'm going to say a little caveat for this, which is sometimes your data sets are just too big for certain things. So for example, I had someone who needed basically the entire archive of the London Times from like the 1800s to 2019. That's what we were able to purchase for them. And that came into 1 terabyte hard drives. So it's harder to find a place where you could store that data. However, once you do your initial extraction and you're able to have your data sets that you're going to be working with, then that's what you can actually put in your 3-2-1, so that you are able to get that and you know, make sure that you have the storage that you need. But just know that not won't necessarily be the case like when you have those big terabytes, just that you will have to process your data, extract your data set, and then go from there. Also to know, if you do have a grant, I think it's as of next year, you will need to have a research data management plan, which means how we're going to manage your data. So definitely you might want to contact see what my colleague Elisa has for research data management in terms of workshops, and then take one of those. I think it will be really useful to you. A question that I get very often, and it's actually a really interesting thing that, you know, what we're dealing with right now, is how to archive and or publish. I put image here. I just realized I made a mistake. It's not just image, it's just your research data in general. I will have to fix this before I send it to you. So what does it mean to publish your data? So whenever you write an article or you do any kind of research and you collected data, it is now heavily encouraged to share that data for a couple of reasons. Number one is, you know, sometimes you create a study and people want to see the data that went to the study and want to make sure that, you know, like they can analyze it with taking that into account. But other times you might want to do it because you also want to share your data and you want other people to be able to reproduce your research. You know, that I want to be able to also for people to use this amazing data set that you created. So that's a great thing to do. It supports open access. It supports a lot of amazing, you know, research principles and research sort of like values. However, when you're using licensed data, that may not always be a possibility. So the main thing I want to say is if you have used any type of licensed data, always talk to us, talk to the library about whether you can share your data or not, because depending on what contract we're working with, you may or may not be able to do so. It's not an issue for open access data, but it is an issue for like licensed data. Now, if you do have a grant that is requiring something, again, talk to us. There are sort of like workarounds where like you're complying with the grant and you're abiding by the terms of the license that we have. But mainly what I want to say is just make sure that you talk to us and that you so we can advise you on what to do, because again, we want to make sure that everything is done as it should be done. And then if you are able to do that, you can deposit your data into a repository. There's a few that we have here, but Miguel has its own. So you have a medium-sized data set, smaller, medium-sized. We have the Miguel Dataverse where you can do that. And also this is not only for text analysis data, any data set that you have created that you have used for your research, you can deposit onto the Miguel Dataverse as long as like you're, you know, legally allowed to do that. So like as long as like, you know, there's no copyright issues. If not, we also have the Federated Research Data Repository, which is for big data. And what you can also do is, you know, publish it as a data article in a data journal. So there's a few things that you can do, but it's something that you definitely want to think about right now. If you get a grant, because there are data sharing requirements for certain grants. So that's something that you may be affected by. And also because, you know, you want to know what you're going to be doing with your data once your study it's done. I know that some of you are coming from medicine where sharing your data is actually very common. If you're coming from the humanities, that's not something that has been truly done lately, or in the past few years, or since we've been talking about data sharing. So that is something that you may be less used to, but I think we're moving towards an environment where we're sharing more data. It's just that we want to make sure that you are able to do that, and that you are doing that without any legal issues surrounding it. So if you're ever using licensed data, just talk to us and we'll try to figure out what's the best thing we can do. We have in the library, we have research data management experts, and we have copyright experts that can help us guide you to what you need to know in order to share your data, if it's possible, or if we can tell you, sorry, for this one, you just can't. But I do recommend thinking about this before you start your project, because you don't want to do your project with a grant that you got and then know that you have to publish your data and realize that you can't publish your data. So I would say, as you're planning your project, this is something to pay attention to, is what will I need to do with this data once I'm done? And am I allowed to do it with the license that, this particular data set is entered? So if there are any questions, okay, perfect. Okay. And then we come sort of back to our last part, which is output. So a lot of times when you're thinking about a data, a text analysis project, people are thinking about what kind of output they'd like to create. So a couple of outputs for text analysis projects. So you can write a white paper, a scholarly research publication. So it could be a book, it could be it could be an article, it could be a book chapter. So you have your regular, I would say, like normal or regular ones, or traditional methods of publication, but you may end up creating a digital collection and an exhibit. Sometimes people will do databases. Sometimes you'll have multimodal or interactive narratives, like using like maps or games, or we have something called Scalar, which allows you to create sort of like a mix between a book and a website. You can also create immersive media applications like augmented reality or virtual reality. We've got our digital objects too, like data viz and images and audio and video, depending on what you need to do. And also you can create documentation. So a lot of times, even though your text analysis project maybe you wrote an article, there's going to be documentation about how it was created. There's going to be documentation on the data set or things like that. So these are some of our outputs for this project. But a big issue with digital projects and with text analysis projects so far has been sustainability. Unfortunately, we see that, especially when you have these digital projects that are like turned into digital objects, there are issues with continuity and sustainability. The first one is maintenance, like maintaining a project. Sometimes you lose funding or things like that. So they kind of like get lost in the interwebs. Evolving technologies, a lot of times we're creating things that then technology changes and we're not able to really maintain them because the technology is now obsolete. This could happen with like file formats and things like that, things that we encounter that way. So it's possible that you share your data and then, I don't know, that format in which you share your data is no longer used, and then again, like that sort of gets lost. And then the last one is just attrition. People change jobs, people change institutions, and then a lot of it gets lost during that time. So what I have here, and I was liking it, is it's a really good something that they did. I can't remember exactly what institution it is, but it's a digital project preservation plan. And it's a really good guide, but then it has some really good guiding documents for you to plan your project. And it makes you think a lot through a lot of the things that we have been talking about today. I'll just show you what it looks like. So you first have the guide, which we're not going to look at as much, but it just gives you a lot of useful information. But then it has this all these different forms that you can fill out, for your own project. But what I really like about it is that it's really making you think about all these different things that we talked about today before you start your project, ideally, so that you are able to really plan your project and really plan what happens with your project once you are done, because you're putting a lot of time into this and want to make sure that, it is actually something that can be sustained in the future, and that, people will be able to get benefit from not just reading your article maybe, but also using the data and things like that. Yes, I can put that link in the chat. And also remember that everything that I linked today, or anything that's linked on the slides you're gonna get it, because I'm sending the slides to everyone who registers. So just know that that is there for you. So this has been all for me today. I'm going to stop the recording, and then we can talk more if you have specific questions, or if you want to talk a little bit about this. As I said, we were not going to be here for like the hour and a half. I wasn't sure how many questions we were going to get, so I just wanted to make sure to give us the time. The last thing I say before I stop the recording and we can chat a little bit more is that if you have any questions, I just realized I made a mistake in the email. Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Okay, there we go. So we're gonna share again. Perfect. So if you have any questions about this, there are a couple of ways you can get help. The first one is you can always start by talking to your librarian. So whoever your liaison librarian here at McGill is, liaisons are the librarians that we have assigned to each department. So you can, if you know who they are, or if you don't, but you know that you have one, you can always reach out to them and get the process started. A lot of times they will bring me in, and they'll also you'll be referred to me, but sometimes you won't. So if you want to start with them, it's also helpful sometimes to start with them because they may have subject knowledge that I don't have. So they might be helpful in sort of pinpointing what kind of data set or what would we like to get before you come and talk to me about how we go about getting it. So your liaison librarian is a great person to get started with. And then if not, you can always contact the Digital Scholarship Hub, which is me. So I'm the one who replies to those emails, but it's always good to have it there because it may happen that I won't be here or something like that, and someone else is looking over it. So if you email the Digital Scholarship Hub, then we can get you set up with, I'm going to put our email address in the chat as well, so that you have it. But yeah, you can always reach out to us, and then we can help you get started. We can talk about anything that you're thinking about when it comes to text analysis. Same thing if you want to have a quick review on how to use one of the platforms where you can get, where you can extract your data sets on your own, and you're not sure how to do that, you can always talk to us. I do one-on-one meetings on the TDM Studio all the time. So you can do that there as well. We can do that as well. So you can always contact us, and then we'll help you get set up. But again, it's either your liaison librarian or you can talk to the Digital Scholarship Hub, and we'll help you with where you need to get. We are a team of librarians. So for example, I do a lot of the, liaising with our students and with our researchers and helping you through navigating these platforms. But as I mentioned before, we have experts on copyright, we have experts on rich data management. I have people who know R, we have people who know Python. So if you have any questions about that, if you just write to us with Digital Scholarship Hub, and then I'll put you in contact with the best person to help you. And yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you so much for coming today. And yeah, I'll stop the recording and then you can ask any questions if you want to unmute yourselves or anything like that. I haven't stopped it yet.